Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Pagoda. This is your host, Anthony Sylvia. I have a very special guest for today's episode. He is a freshman at Ball State University, or as the kids these days call it, the State of Balls University. He is an F1 guru. It is my stepson, Dylan Beatty. How are you?
Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. It's nice to be on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for joining. Excuse me if I'm a little coughing or clearing my throat because I have a little bit of bronchitis and pneumonia uh, settling in from a doctor visit yesterday. So I'm going to try to make it through this podcast and not cough up a storm or anything.
It is that season. It happens to the best of us.
Yes. Uh, so Dylan's an F1 guru. I brought him on to kind of give us some more insight into the F1 Australian Grand Prix, as I did not stay up till 1 or
Yep.
so in the morning to
Good old,
watch it.
good old 12 in the morning race is a
Yeah.
fun time staying up for that. Gotta love the Oceania and Southeast Asian races. They're a fun time to stay up for.
Yeah, I never stay up for him, but it's
I don't
ridiculous.
blame you.
I'm too old. Um, um, so we'll go ahead and get into it. We got a lot to talk about. It was an
It's an eventful
interesting,
weekend.
yeah, it was an interesting day and a half of racing, if you will. Um, we'll get into some quick news here. Did you ever get to check out the Botas Uber video?
I saw bits and pieces of it. He had that mullet flowing with his blonde hair. It was pretty interesting in that the land down under for him. It was an eventful video to say the least.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was epic. I mean, classic Botas. I mean, he's a character, and the part that I loved the most, it was about midway through the video, the bug reduction system, uh,
I That part was
with
pretty funny.
with the long pause and the little spray in his face and the cough. It was brilliant. It was awesome. Um, yeah, it was a good promo there for Uber Australia.
For Uber, I think it was a good promo just for him as well. It gets his little sense of humor outside of just the F1 community. I liked that a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Um, and then second, there was an announcement this week that the 100 Days of Indy is coming to Netflix. So
That's a surprise. That's good for them.
yeah, I think it's going to be really cool. It really expands their visibility and kind of broadens to different markets. And I mean, everyone's on Netflix,
Yeah.
and I think previously it was broadcasted on the CW, which I don't even
Uh,
get.
yeah, the CW. I don't think very many people are on the CW or anything like that anymore. I think it's good for them to be on Netflix with Drive to Survive, and I know NASCAR has a program. I think it's also on Netflix as
Yeah.
well. So I think this will help get more outreach for IndyCar, which will be very nice.
Yeah, I think so too. And yeah, it'll be good exposure for the series and to hopefully give them a little bit of boost. Because they certainly didn't get it from today's thermal race. So
No, that was a
we'll
doozy to say the least.
we'll get into that here in a little bit. Um, and then the third bit of news announced this week is Sebastian Vettel was testing a Penske Porsche Le Mans car, had a 36-hour test in Spain.
Yeah, I did
So
see that. I did see that. I think that's very good for Vettel, since he's obviously not in F1 anymore. I know he still enjoys racing cars and stuff like that, but he wants to strive to be more eco-friendly and stuff like that. So I think the Porsche Penske test is going to allow him to express that stuff a lot more openly than he can with F1. Um, but I also think it's just great to see Vettel back in a car after the amount of time he's been out.
yeah, agreed. And who knows? I mean, this could lead into a 24 hours of Le Mans preview, if you will, for him. So
I genuinely think he might go and race in Le Mans this year, either this year or maybe next year.
yeah, I mean, he's done so much in his career and he's accomplished so much. And I mean, what better way to kind of put the
Wrap it all
icing on
up.
the cake, yeah, to compete in the 24 hours. So yeah, that would be pretty cool. Um, yeah, so we'll go ahead and get into the episode today. Two of the main things that happened this weekend, the thermal all-star event for IndyCar and the Australian GP for Formula One. So let's get into it.
So first off, we got the IndyCar thermal. Overall, I thought the weekend, the outlining of it, I thought it was all right, but the final outcome of it, I did not really care for that much.
Yeah, it was. I mean, we'll get it a little bit deeper here, but f for the listeners, it was basically a 2-day event where they did some. I think it might have been 3 days. Um,
I think it was 3 days.
yeah, and they did some testing. They did four different test sessions. Um, it was like up to 9 hours, I think it was, of on track testing.
Yeah, it was quite a bit.
Um, Palu was pretty much the fastest the whole time. I think,
Dominant for at least the first two sessions. I know the McLarens were up there for the second and third, but other than that, Fluke pretty much dominated everything, like he has been the past year.
yeah, exactly. I think he's got to be in those championship talks to repeat. Um, he's had a pretty good. I mean, besides St. Pete, he kind of had a mediocre race, finished sixth. Um, but I still think. I mean, this race he pretty much hit his stride, and he could be dangerous for the
Every other
upcoming
race.
races.
Yeah.
Yep. Um, to get into it, qualifying, Rosenquist's Group One for heat number one was the fastest, and then Palou, obviously, Group Two, Heat Two, grabbed the pole for that race. Uh,
That
heat,
wasn't even close.
yeah, it wasn't. Uh, the Heat One definitely started out interesting.
Yeah,
Um,
with Grosjean getting spun by Dixon.
yeah, it was. I know there were some comments that Herta got into Dixon a little bit. I didn't see it. I didn't see a touch or
Uh,
tire rub. I know he went low to made it three wide, but um, I didn't see any contact there. I saw, Dixon kind of get a little bit of gap between him and Herta, and then just he drove into the back of Grosjean. So
yeah, I think Dixon was trying to avoid Herta and was trying to get on the brakes just a little later because he was anticipating that contact, but didn't brake hard enough and just plowed into Grosjean, which we saw how that all turned out,
yeah,
taking out him and VK.
hmm yeah, VK was just wrong place, wrong time, and Will Power kind of he saved the day for his team and went way, way wide
Yeah,
off
but
track to
in the end
save it.
didn't help him out at all.
Yeah, yeah,
Ended up not making the top six for that
he was
heat.
pretty much non-factor.
The second heat was a lot cleaner for sure. No wrecks, but at the same time, it was a little bit boring to say. But
Hmm
I mean, I think that's just how the heats were with how that panned out. It's only a 20-minute race or 10 laps, which for the track is, I think, a good amount, but there's not very many good passing sections for that track. And
hmm
which, speaking of the track, up until this event, I genuinely haven't really ever heard of the track. I thought it's an okay layout, but I think for IndyCar and what they wanted to achieve with this, I don't think it really panned out how they wanted it to, or at least
Yeah,
from a viewer's perspective.
yeah, same. It almost seemed like an F1 track more than an IndyCar track. It really did kind of look
Yeah,
like it. Um, I did like a few of the sections, and yeah, I mean, with the long straights, and if you had plenty of push to pass, you can use those to kind of dive bomb into the next corner, which we did see a couple times. We saw
there was a
Rossi
couple
did
times
it.
of that. Yep, Rossi.
Um, so yeah, I mean, I yeah, I have some opinions, but we'll get into more of the racing. Um, so yeah, Heat Race 2, Polo dominated start to finish, led every lap. His teammate finished second. And
Yeah,
then
Armstrong was looking pretty good.
yeah, he was stout. Ray Hall was looking pretty good in Heat too. Notables that didn't transfer, which I was very surprised that Pato didn't transfer, but
Yeah, Pato.
Marcus Ericsson, he just was non-factor the whole time. Starting
Yeah,
in the
he
back from that wreck and qualifying.
yeah, getting passed by the rookies too. The rookies were looking pretty strong this weekend
Yeah,
for that.
yeah, for sure. Um, and then to kind of backtrack here a little bit, in heat race, Power obviously didn't make it. Kyle Kirkwood didn't make it.
I think it was more of a non-factor all weekend. He wasn't really around, but he also did wreck in I think it was practice two. So I mean that did backtrack the team a little bit, but it was still kind of disappointing to see him in the back compared to I mean how he did in St. Pete 2 weeks ago. He was looking pretty decent there, but this weekend he just wasn't there at all. Even in the first practice, where I think it was the first practice, he what or hadn't wrecked yet, but
Mhm.
ever since the wreck, he was just a complete non-factor.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And then Dixon obviously did make it with his drive-through penalty for the avoidable contact
Yeah,
on that first lap. So, and then we get into the main event. Again, it was
all
all
Palou.
Palou. It was,
Scotty
I,
Mack was there a little bit, but
yeah,
Palou just pulled away immediately. Even with the strategies that were in play, it was all Palou.
hmm yeah. Which, speaking of strategies, I really, really liked Herta's strategy of just run half throttle, just take it
Yeah,
easy, and don't get lapped in those first 10 laps, and saved every bit of tires.
all of that. Yeah, I
And
like that.
yeah, it was a bold move. It sort of paid it off. I mean, he did come from the back and got into the
It's,
money spots.
yeah, finished what, fourth, right?
Yeah, finished fourth. So what was that? 150K, I think he won for that.
I think it was 150 for him. Yeah.
Yeah, because fifth was 50K. So yeah, 150K for Hurtis. So going from 23K where he started to
Yep.
150
To
is not too bad.
150. That's a pretty good investment for him.
Yeah, I think it was a smart move for the team to kind of capitalize on from where they were and to get the most out of it as they could, which I mean, we'll get
There
into
was
the
no, yeah, there was no catching anybody else for him.
yeah, and it really just reminded me of an F1 race. Everyone got spread out. There was really no passing.
Yeah,
There was a few passes here or there, mostly
but
in
the
like tra
midfield,
yeah, about mid-pack, transfer positions and the heats and the money position, if you will, for that fourth, fifth, sixth range. Um, that's kind of where the action was, but in the front, it was just follow the leader. Paulu was, channeling his inner Max Verstappen and just ran away with it.
yep, that's typical Verstappen for you, except not this weekend.
Oh, yeah. We'll get into that. We'll chat a little F1. Um, so I guess the biggest thing was this worth it? It was, I think IndyCar missed the mark. They
I think
they
they genuinely did too.
they missed it. It was, man. I mean, if there was a positive that I can pull out of it, I would say the heat races were a good thing. I like those.
I did like the heat races.
Um, the timing I think was bad. I feel like IndyCar just used it as a schedule filler
Yeah, I
for
agree with that.
having a month or so off between the
Yeah,
first and second race. Um, so bad timing. The I don't think there was enough exposure uh for the key market of the audience.
I
Um,
think they promoted it half decently, but it's just a fact of what they were trying to promote. I don't think just off of what they were promoting it was big enough. I feel like they promoted it a lot. I just don't think the way they were promoting it and how it turned out was what they expected it to.
mhm. Yeah, because it seems like all they talked about was these rich folks that have 15, $20 million homes sitting on a racetrack with their McLarens and Ferraris. And it's
Yeah.
like, okay, great, but your target audience aren't the millionaires. We're middle
Mm-mm.
class folks that, you know, can't afford a $500 ticket. You
No,
know,
that's like an F1 race.
yeah. And even even at that, I mean, I did read where the ticket price actually started out at $2,000 and they reduced it to 500. But
which is still unacceptable for IndyCar with the state that it's in right now. No, that's not acceptable, or at least in my standards.
yeah, it completely misses the market and where IndyCar strives in is, that middle class, family oriented, take the kids to the racetrack, um, and your middle class invested fans,
Hmm.
like you and I, we can only afford so much, you know,
Yeah,
with the way grocery prices are and gas
all
and
the
just anything.
inflation. Yeah,
Yeah, with anything, I mean, for $500, both of my or all four of my Indy 500 tickets come to $520. So, you know, that's the greatest race in the world. So, why would I invest a $500 single ticket to go to an all-star race that
not
had
even an all-star race.
zero passing? And I shouldn't say zero passing,
There
very
was a little
limited,
passing. Yeah,
limited passing. Um, it was really, I think, just to put on a show for the rich, exclusive, gated community members.
yeah,
And this is an F1. That's their market. I mean,
that is their market.
they market the glitz and the glamour and having money and that's it's not IndyCar and I just didn't care for it. Just
No,
really didn't care for it. There were some interesting tweets
there were
or
a lot of interesting tweets about
posts.
it
I guess it's no longer Twitter, but
on
X
X.
posts, X
Yeah,
posts. Um, I'm gonna scroll through a few of them here. Um, so here was a good one from Corey L underscore ME28 that I follow on X. He says, usually after an IndyCar race, I'm always satisfied and felt like I had a good time watching it. I can't say the same about this. It's the first time I've ever felt deflated and dissatisfied with an IndyCar race in a very long time.
I agree with him.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Vincent Designs, another one of the guys I follow. No chaos, no nothing, just looking like a test. IndyCar, thanks for trying something different, but please go back to the drawing board on this one. And yeah,
I agree with that as well.
it's hit spot on. And then this one here, I don't even know who this. I don't even think I follow this guy, but it was in reply to Jenna Fryer, so I just saw it scrolling through her feed. He basically just said this event is totally uninteresting.
I agree. It was not
Um,
eventful at all.
and I found this post quite interesting from Jordan Taylor, the IMSA driver. Said the Thermal $1 million commercial.
Yep,
Pretty
that's about all it was.
pretty much sums it up. Um,
Walking
yeah,
billboard.
yeah, exactly. The media and the TV personalities really try to speak it up, be like, "Oh, this was awesome! It's been so great being here." And yeah, it was enjoyable for the few that were there. You
Yes,
got free food,
I
and
don't think the ticket sales were very high, even with the reduced prices. But
yeah, and then I didn't even see any like grandstands that were for like, the casual fans. I saw there was like a club like on one of the
yeah,
back straights,
I
but
think it was primarily just the people that lived there.
yeah, and yeah, I mean when you're trying to, boost ratings and boost um, you know,
Viewership.
viewership of the series and get people invested and wanting to go, your target your middle class ages 20 to 49. Uh
This was not it.
Great. You totally missed it. And IndyCar just needs to go back to the drawing board. Some ideas that I kind of threw around in some replies on X,
Go
you
back to
know,
Texas,
yeah, let's
Atlanta.
let's go to Texas. Let's go to a mile and a half track. You can go to Texas, you can go to Phoenix. Kentucky Speedway is not in use. It has lights. Put it there.
Go
And
there. Yep.
put it halfway through the season. So you kind of break up your season, have a first half, second half,
Hmm.
and kind of close this gap between the first race and second race.
That's too long of a gap.
yeah, and kind of put that gap in the middle of the season, whether if that's after Indy, whatever, maybe after Detroit, put a little gap in there, put an all-star race, you know, heat races, fine, keep the heat races.
I
Um,
did enjoy the heat races. I thought it was a good idea. I think they needed to be a little bit longer though, because it's basically a one shot qualifying. I mean, you could run 2 laps. You just gotta time everything exactly perfect and make sure you're not using up that push pass, which almost everybody did, as we saw from Herta. Herta tried doing it, and that did not pan out very well for him. But I
mhm.
did like the idea with the cautions, which I know IndyCar usually does. If they get throw a red flag, that they just pause the session and allow everybody to go back out, or if there's not enough time, they allow everybody to get that one flyer in. I do like that with what they do, but I think they needed to do a little bit more on the timing wise.
Yeah. Yeah, they're if they really want to create a true all-star event, they need to kind of look how NASCAR does it. I mean, they offer $1 million to the winner. There's, there's a lot of hype behind it. I think they still have some sort of like heat races, or maybe they just still keep the stage racing. I don't know.
It's like a
Um,
racing, I think. I don't
yeah,
pay attention much anymore to NASCAR, but I think that's how it works.
yeah, I think they have like like they call it the open race or something, where they kind of race into the main event and then hold the main event in some like different segments, but which is kind of similar to what they did this weekend. But um yeah, they just need to get it to the right market it the right way, put it at the right tracks. It's going to kind of create a little bit more excitement, a little bit more passing, a little bit more action. Because I listened to Marshall Pruitt's podcast before
Mhm.
Thermal earlier in the week, and he did some driver interviews, and the consensus with most of the drivers was that the prize money, there wasn't enough to outweigh the risks of damaging your race car. Um,
Yeah,
500,000, great. Well, the driver may see a quarter of that after,
yeah. If that
yeah.
taxes, because they're out in California, it's what, like 40%, if not more, taxes out there.
Yeah, I saw somebody say that it could be close to half of it, right off the top, and then the team's going to get 70% of it. And
Yep.
then, Palou may have
He'll probably get about
$50,000.
Yeah, he'll probably get about 70,000 of that, if that.
Yeah. So, not enough money to make it worth their while to tear up race cars, and um, you know, that's kind of what NASCAR does. They get into those races and they have at it, and
And they have fun.
they have fun and they tear up a lot of stuff. Um,
Yeah, that's what they do that pretty well.
well, every week, but even more so in all-star events.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
but yeah, and that's thermal. Not impressed.
not at all.
Go back to the drawing board and let's figure it out. Get some input from fans. And it's funny, just to touch before we move on. I read somewhere, I don't know, I think it was on X, somebody posted it that IndyCar doesn't even have a VP of marketing. It's like, how can you promote the
Oh,
sport and how can you really get into our markets and increase the exposure to probably one of the greatest
fan bases. Yeah.
products that we have in American motorsports? I mean, we're way more exciting than NASCAR. And I
Besides
would,
besides their road races, which can be a little entertaining, they're at
they're a
Coda, I think.
Coda. Yeah.
Yeah, which I think that's going to be a pretty exciting race.
Hmm.
But those races are usually the only more entertaining ones, and then you get your Bristols and your Martinsvilles.
Hmm.
But those are usually the more entertaining races, not
Yeah.
what we saw with Thermal when they tried something new.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I guess that's that. Let's just do
Move on from
better
Thermal and leave it in the past.
and do better. Go back to the drawing board and let's just do better. All
I
right,
totally agree with that.
moving on. Formula One, the
Oh yeah,
Australian Grand Prix,
the land down under.
the land down under. When I think of Australian, I think of Foster's beer. I think of those commercials from the 90s, Foster's. Australian phobia. It just sticks every time
Sticks.
it sticks every time they go to Australia.
Makes a good
Um,
impression for you.
eh,
Something to look forward to.
yeah, good beer too. Um,
Wouldn't know.
eh, it's debatable.
Debatable.
Yeah, it might not be the best foreign beer, but anyhow, I digress. Um, Getting into the recap of Australia. So
First
the
big thing.
the first big thing was the Williams situation.
Um, Typical Albon, I guess, for Australia. Shunted it into a turn six. Same exact thing he did last year, except this time it was during practice and not during the race. Uh, but doing the same exact thing again. You figured he'd learn from his mistakes, but he didn't.
Hmm.
Um, and then they let good old Logie do FP2, and then told him some pretty unfortunate news overnight, or at least for us, it was overnight.
Yeah, giving up the seat for Albon to race. I think the reasoning was that that Albon had a better shot of scoring the
of
most points.
of scoring a point,
Yeah,
and that still didn't end up happening, as you'll see later on.
yeah,
But
because I haven't watched the race, but I've seen
um,
very short clips. But
very
um,
short clips is about what you how it should be.
well, yeah,
Yeah,
for an F1 race, there's probably not much that happens. But from what I saw on X, Twitter, what have you, um, it seemed to be a decent race. There's, a few things that kind of happened early, I think on lap five.
it
Max
was lap
Verstappen.
three.
Oh, was it three?
It was lap
Oh,
three, I'm pretty sure.
okay.
And then a couple laps later, Hamilton retired to due to an engine failure.
Yeah, I saw that as well. And, so no more Max. I mean, we
It's
actually
like
have a new winner.
new winner for once, except it's not really a new winner. It's the only other person that's won outside of a Red Bull since 2022, something
Yeah.
like that. Good like 20 something races, or if not more, but it's only going to be Checo, Max, or Carlos, and Carlos is only two of those. I think
Hmm.
Checo only won two last year, the first two, I think, or the first and third, something like that.
Yep.
Other than that, it's just been Max, 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 Max.
Yeah. And that's part of the reason why I don't watch much F1 because I already know who's going to win. But the
Yep,
one time I didn't watch, he didn't win. So maybe I
yep.
should just stop watching.
The one time everybody stays up because, or doesn't wake up or stays up because of the good old time zone differences. Um, Max DNFs, which is a big shock.
Well, I was shocked when I woke up this morning and I saw your text, and then I went to X and I'm like, oh, Max didn't win.
What
Uh,
a shock.
like, okay, great. Um, so yeah, Max doesn't win. So who did win? Carlos
Carlos
Sainz,
Sainz.
coming off of appendix surgery,
Yeah,
and
apparently everybody needs to get their appendix removed now, is what he's saying.
yeah, I would say so. Had a good race, and what a way to come back from missing a race to just
Missing a
come out and win
race.
the thing.
Yeah, it was pretty impressive on his end. I think it was pretty impressive on Ferrari's end as well, coming up with a 1-2.
Hmm.
Better than what I expected them to do. But Sergio also got a grid penalty for impeding one of the Haas cars during qualifying. So he had a three-place grid penalty. So instead of him starting, I think it was third, he was starting sixth. So that also kind of helped the McLarens and Ferraris get a little bit farther up the grid. But I still think is if Max wouldn't have had the brake issue he was having, I still believe Sainz would have had a pretty good shot. He looked very strong all weekend and was pretty competitive against Max during those practice sessions and qualifying.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, you would know because you watched it all. I didn't, so I
Yeah,
just
I
got the
watched
bits
a
and
good amount of
pieces.
it.
Um, but yeah, so yeah, good for Ferrari.
Moving up, not botching a strategy call for once.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
it's a new era down in the Ferrari.
Yeah, I think they've had two podiums in two races, I think, this year. Or
I think
Signs has had two
Sainz has
podiums in
had
two races.
two podiums since he obviously missed the race. Behrman, who filled in, I'm sure you went over that a little bit whenever they
Mhm.
raced down in wherever it was,
Bahrain.
Saudi Arabia.
That's it. Yeah.
Yep. He filled in. He did pretty good there. Um, so yeah, I think Ferrari's just moving up in the world finally.
Yeah, it's about time. I mean, after their dominance in the 2000s and then fell off the map and Mercedes
Fell off.
took over,
Yep.
then Red Bull
Mercedes
took
is falling
over.
off now.
Yeah. And then now Ferrari's kind of coming back in there. So it's kind of a cycle. But
It really is just a cycle.
Ferrari's got two in the top four in constructors. Or no,
Yep.
two
Uh,
drivers in the top four in the standings,
yeah.
and they're
If
second in the
Leclerc
constructors.
would have, if Leclerc would have won the race, he would have been first in the constructors. That would have knocked Max off. He would have been in the lead by 5 points.
Hmm. Yeah, so
So
kudos to them and McLaren. They're sitting
McLaren's
fifth and
rocking
sixth.
uh,
Yeah.
fifth and sixth in the constructors. I think they're or not in the
Or
constructors in the
drivers.
drivers.
Yeah.
They sit in
Piastri
P
and them.
three.
Yep.
They're more points combined than the Mercedes and Aston combined together. They're more points ahead of them. They have 55, I think, and Aston and Mercedes only have I think 21 and like 23 or something like that.
Hmm.
So they're pretty good ways ahead.
Yeah. So I mean, I think it's looking pretty good for. I mean, I think the way it's going to shape up, just going off of recent history. I think it's going to be Red Bull, Ferrari, and McLaren, probably in that order in constructors and driver standings. Um,
I'd say that depending on the tracks, I think Alonso he's doing pretty good considering the circumstances of the Aston, which started off really good last year. This year they've started off decent, not as well as they did last year, but we'll see how well they keep up with the development curve this year compared to last year. Last year they really stunk it up. Um, but I think as long as he does pretty good with keeping up with the car and the changes, I think he'll probably finish top five in the constructors or for the drivers championship.
yeah, yeah. So time will tell. And then yeah, so those are the big winners for F1. The losers, on the other hand,
Alonso,
Alonso with that penalty, and I didn't see
yeah.
what happened, but I heard it was kind of
Um,
a bad call.
It genuinely was a pretty bad call. So this is the second to lap race or second to last lap. I think it's lap 57. They're going into turn six, and Alonso lets off the gas a little bit to try to hit the apex a little bit better, but brakes a little bit to get a little better exit out of the corner. And Russell is chasing him, trying to get the position back from him or to pass him. And George wasn't expecting him to brake as hard as he did, or just brake in general, because typically it's flat out or just a downshift through that turn. Caught George completely off guard and lost all traction and grip on the front and just shunted it into the barriers.
Mm,
Um, but the telemetry showed that he hit the brakes or whatever. So they decided to give him a 20-second penalty, which I thought was pretty unjust considering what Sergio was able to do to Lewis, as a couple people on I saw X tweeting about, with Sergio defending and holding up Lewis about however many seconds it was during the championship race in 2021, holding him up so Max could catch him. Why was Sergio allowed to do that, but Fernando can't take a better line, even though he's in the lead, to try to preserve that
mm.
and just gets 20-second penalty for that. I think that was pretty unjust. And supposedly he was having throttle issues at the end. He could have very easily been BSing it, but who knows with Aston and them probably trying to just get out of the penalty. But I thought it was a pretty unjust penalty.
Yeah, and I saw they made another reference to I can't tell you what race it was. It was during the season where Lewis and Max were it would have been Max's championship, but it was the one that came down to like the final race. So that
Yeah,
season there was one where um I guess maybe Max made like a dive bomb move at the last second and or maybe it was reversed. Maybe it was the other way around, but somebody came down on somebody. It was a 10-second penalty for Lewis. And people were like, it's the same move.
Mhm.
Why wasn't uh Alonso penalized only 10 seconds, versus the
Instead of
20?
20. The 20 was pretty atrocious. I think that's 2 years in a row somebody's gotten a pretty atrocious penalty at the very end of the race. Because it happened to Carlo. Was it Carlos last year? I think it's Carlos last year because Leclerc crashed at the beginning. And there's a red flag at the very end of the race. It was basically a 1 or 2 lap shootout. And he ran into Alonso, or Alonso spun him or something like yeah, Carlos spun Alonso by accident first lap right off a restart. Usually they don't get penalties there. They gave him a basically a 10-second penalty that drops him from podium down to the outside of the points. So
Hmm.
that's 2 years in a row. The stewards there in Australia have been pretty rough on the drivers for not very, I guess, justifiable reasons.
Mhm. I can't say that I'm surprised, really. It's Formula One seems to, I shouldn't say just Formula One, just the stewards in general just have some interesting calls.
Very
Uh,
questionable these days.
yeah, that a lot of people don't agree with, and could be a little bit too harsh for the crime, but it is what it is. That's how they roll. Yeah, so Alonso, big loser. Mercedes, no podiums this year. They're
Seventh and
sitting
10th.
seventh and tenth in the standings, fourth in constructors. Aston's just right behind them, like a point behind, and they're they're not hitting their stride, and a little disappointing, but
I think it's
they gotta
very disappointing.
they gotta step it up. Or they're looking to be sitting fifth or even worse.
Uh,
Come
I
the end of the year.
I don't know. I think the backfield is pretty far off compared to at least where Mercedes is at, but Mercedes definitely needs to step it up if they want to be somewhere in that 2, 3, 4 fight. I think they're falling pretty far behind. I think it's a good time for Lewis to leave Mercedes. But at the same time, I don't think he's going to be going. I mean, if the rate keeps up with what Ferrari's doing right now and isn't going to be shunting their good old strategy calls again, I think it'll be all right for Lewis. But I think it's about time for Lewis to hang it up possibly if it's going to keep up with this path. And obviously, he's not getting any younger. His reflexes and stuff like that aren't going to be getting any better.
Hmm.
So I think it's a good time for him to make the move, but I don't know how well that's going to fit. But I think it's really good for Sainz to get this win on a winner's perspective. Um, Gives him a lot more holding room on which teams can sign him, I guess, for next year, since everybody obviously knows he's not going to be back at Ferrari. So
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. I don't have an idea of where he would go. Maybe the Mercedes seat. Um, I don't know.
possibly Mercedes, possibly Aston, depending on what Fernando wants to do, because he's also up. Um, I know there's a lot of connections, or supposedly there's a lot of connections to him to Audi, but I would not want to see Carlos going to a trashy team like Kick, who can't even do a full pit stop at the current moment. That's not 50 seconds long and not completely horrible and ruining the driver's race. I wouldn't want him to go to somewhere like that. So I feel like he's going to go to either Mercedes or Aston next year, would be my
Hmm.
guess.
Yeah, we will see. Um, all right. That's Formula One. Key takeaways. IndyCar. Who's hot and who's not? You got to look at Rosenquist. After the start he had at St. Pete, broke the track record in qualifying, had a good finish, and then shows up and has a really, really solid thermal all-star showcase, whatever it was. Um, yeah, I think moving forward here, as we kind of get through, what do they got coming up? Long Beach, I think.
I think it's
Um,
Long Beach.
yeah,
I gotta look at the schedule, but I think it's Long Beach.
yeah, with Long Beach coming up, and then you know, I think, I think he's going to be, you know, in the hot seat there to make a push for,
The championship.
yeah, for the championship. it's really surprising, being with a new team
How well he's
and
doing.
yeah, how quickly they've kind of bonded and gelled and good to see. I mean,
I think
I,
it's very good to see. Obviously, by my shirt, you can tell Felix is one of my favorite drivers. So I think he's really going to prove McLaren wrong by letting him go and signing uh who they did over him. Which, I mean, it is what it is. They want to go younger because I know Felix is getting a little bit older, but Felix is also not letting up, and he's been doing pretty good. So I think McLaren's really going to want that one back.
hmm yeah, for sure. And then Alex Palou, I mean, I know he had kind of a mediocre St. Pete, but really showed up at Thermal. And if he treats the rest of the season like he did Thermal, like watch out.
There's nobody gonna be able to catch him. I mean, I know Joseph started off pretty good. He was pretty unstoppable there at St. Pete. So I think it's gonna be between him and Palou based off of these first two races. I know we still have a good amount of races left this season, but I think in the long run that's who it's gonna come down to is those two and possibly Felix.
Yep, yeah, for sure. Who's not hot in IndyCar? Scott Dixon. Like, what happened? Like, not not a good St. Pete. Thermal was a nightmare.
I
This
think it's
is
more just the whole Chip Ganassi crew, besides obviously Palou. But I mean, actually, no, because Armstrong did pretty good as well. So I wouldn't say the whole chip team. But Scott, compared to his teammates, he's not doing so hot. I think he really needs to step it up based off of the season he did last year because he finished second last year, right? I
mhm,
think.
yep.
So this is definitely pretty disappointing start for him and for the team, I guess.
Yeah, and then you got to start looking at, he's not getting any younger. I think he's what, 40 now, I think.
He's in his 40s.
You know, is it coming up on that time? Who knows?
If it stays like this, I think it probably will be within this year or maybe next year, unless he starts picking it up and gets maybe a 500 win this year, which we'll see how that all runs up and how everybody shows up for that.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll definitely get into the 500 next episode because we have a few more weeks until the next IndyCar race and there won't be much to talk about. So we got to talk about something and
Won't be much for the next few weeks because we got
well,
a 2 week break for F1 as well.
yeah, exactly. So what better way to fill in a gap early in the season like they did Thermal with Indy 500, the greatest race in the world. So,
Some
uh,
silly season talk.
yeah. Yeah, well, that'll be a good time. All right. Uh Takeaways from Formula One. Um Carlos Sainz, how does this performance secure a ride in 2025? We kind of touched on it. And then can Mercedes bounce back? I think those are kind of the key
The key
questions.
points.
Yeah, heading into the next few races. We'll see how Sainz keeps up the trend and if Mercedes can improve. I think that'll kind of tell the story for the rest of the year here in the
Rest of the
next coming
year.
weeks. Yeah.
Hmm.
All right, good deal, good deal. To wrap up here for this episode, as I'm still fighting this cough and I'm keep muting myself to cough every
Trying
like
your best to get
20
through it all.
seconds. Um, so we're just gonna go ahead and wrap up and uh let's get into some driver birthdays. I uh I think I did this I don't know if I did this in the first episode, but I did it in the second episode. I thought it'd be kind of a cool way to tie out the podcast. So
End it.
yeah, so we'll get into some driver birthdays. So coming up on Monday, which is tomorrow. Guys,
Yep,
we're
tomorrow.
recording Sunday afternoon slash evening. Danica Patrick turns 42. Uh Notorious for the Indy 500. She had a pretty good Indy 500 career. 8 starts, had a podium in 2009 where she finished third. Um, we know how
Other than
her,
that,
yeah, we know how her NASCAR career went. Um, yeah, wasn't good. Um, but go Danica, 42. Uh, Linus Lundqvist turns 25 on Tuesday. Uh, former Formula One driver David Coulthard will turn 53 on Wednesday. Uh, Former IndyCar and Indy 500 driver Vitor Mira will turn 47 on Wednesday. Yeah. Uh, he, when you think about, I shouldn't say Cinderellas, but, um, good stories for the Indy 500 and drivers that came close multiple times. You can't help to think about Vitor Mira, had 9 starts in the race, 2 podiums where he finished second in '05 and '08. Uh, I was at both of those races.
Mhm.
He was quite the competitor. He kind of reminds me a lot of um shoot, it's escaping my mind. Um 2020 winner. Let's go.
2020 Takuma? No.
Yes, there we go. Sato. How can I forget Sato? That's who I was thinking of, but I just couldn't get it
Oh,
out.
I don't know if that's who you're thinking of.
Sato, he's always there. Like,
Hmm.
may not qualify the best. He'll kind of hang around a little bit, pick up,
Hanging around the top 10 the whole race and pick it
yeah,
up in those last couple laps.
that last quarter of the race after the final pit stops, or maybe the last couple pit stops in the 500s, that's what
Picks it up.
Sato does. He shows up at the end. That's kind of what Vitor always did. So happy birthday to Vitor. Bill Vukovich from the old time Indy 500s. Yeah, passed away
Oh,
this
back in
last.
there.
Oh yeah, before I was born, but I still remember the name. Passed away this last August. He would have been 80 years old on Thursday. Um, his best finish in the 500 was second in 1973. So there's that. Uh, Current IndyCar driver Colton Herta turns 24.
Mr. Moneyman.
Mr. Moneyman, yeah. Uh, Still a young pup, 24 years old. God, what I would do to be
Pretty young in
24.
there.
Um,
Hey,
yeah, he's still young in his career, but um, you know, 5 Indy 500 starts and has a top 10 in there. So we'll see what he can do this May.
maybe pull one out of the bag. Finish top five, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. Kevin Cogan will turn 68. He's also an old timer. He's had 3 top 5s in his 12 starts. Um, Pretty popular name back in the day. And then to wrap up the birthdays, former F1 driver Mark Webber will turn 68 on Sunday. So there we go. Those are our
Good little,
birthdays.
good little mix of birthdays up in there. Some
It was a decent,
NASCAR with Danica and a bunch of IndyCar. Couple F1 in there.
yeah, it was a decent list this week. Uh, Last week's was a little shorter than that, but yeah.
End of
So,
March is pretty popular, I guess.
no, I reckon, yeah.
Oh, you forgot one in there. Honorable mention to the Steet Sealer. Alex Albons was on Saturday.
Yes, I covered him in the last episode.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yes. Uh, yeah, he did have a birthday last week. Yeah, there we go. Outro next week. No IndyCar. Not
Boring.
until April 21st. Lame. We need
Got
to
a
fill.
got a whole month.
Yeah, we need to fill that gap. That's horrible. You can't grow a sport when you got a whole month and
Need to go to
X
like
weeks.
go to like a road Atlanta or something like that.
Hmm.
Somewhere nice road course or maybe I don't know, somewhere down there. That's I mean, or go to another short track, go to Atlanta maybe, go to VIR. I'm sure that would be a pretty good race if they went there. I know that's a pretty tough and challenging track.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, even some of the tracks that IndyCar doesn't go to, I mean, why they got rid of Texas, I don't know, but they used to race
Baffles
at
me.
Kentucky, Chicagoland, uh, they raced at Richmond, Phoenix. I mean, there's all
Go
kinds of
back to
tracks.
Coda,
Coda, I mean,
the
yeah,
proven racetrack.
absolutely. Like, I would fly down and go to a Coda race if
I would
IndyCar was
too.
there.
I
Like,
definitely would too.
great racetrack, facilities phenomenal, and who doesn't love Texas? I love Texas. Always
Can't go
love
wrong
going
with
there.
it.
I know. It'll be great. Yeah, they got to do something to fill that gap though. That's
Brutal.
rough.
A brutal
Um,
gap.
so yeah, next week, no IndyCar, no Formula
No
One.
Formula One.
So we'll discuss any relevant IndyCar news from the coming week and preview May. It's gonna be a fun month, so
Will be a great month.
can't wait. It is Indiana's religious holiday is the month of May in the Indy 500, so it'll be
Oh
fun.
yeah.
Um, Closing thoughts. You have anything else?
Overall, I think it was a pretty decent weekend of racing. With obviously Max not winning for once, which is great for us F1 fans. Um, Not so much thermal. I mean, good for them for trying something new, but definitely not again. If you're gonna do something, do it at a proven racetrack in at least a different format. I mean, I give them props for the trying the new format, but overall, that was not it at all.
Yeah, agreed. It was bad. All right. I think that's all we got for this week. We'll
All
catch
right.
you all next
Well,
week.
see ya.
All right. Deuces.